Hello friends! I think I have to have a little bit of a talk with the viewers that are interested in learning about why I am not a nice guy and why that doesn't really matter. What I want to tell you guys about is why I have been not a nice guy for most of my life and why I have been a good guy for most of my life. And I'm currently, I think, a good guy, or at least I try my best to be. First of all, I believe that niceness in general is not something admirable or something to be spoken highly of. I believe that most nice people are people who are simply afraid of confrontation, maybe polite, maybe some are kind. But most of them, by and large, I think are just people who are concerned about confrontations with other human beings. Okay, so these are the kind of people that if nobody's watching, they may be doing one thing, but when they're in front of you, they may be nice. These are the kind of people that won't argue with you, they won't swear at you, they won't fight with you, obviously, things like that. But this doesn't necessarily mean they are the kind of people that sacrifice for others, that endure hardship for their friends, that, don't feed themselves when they're poor, but feed their children well. The kind of morality that requires sacrifice specifically, that doesn't necessarily associate itself with niceness. In fact, some of the people that are in my life experience that were the most moral, including some family members, were actually not nice at all. They were sometimes rude to everybody, but these people, you could count on them when you needed them, and they had a certain kind of moral code, and you know that they have that code. They're honest, they're reliable, they're certain things, whatever the code is. Everyone maybe has. Now we live in a time of subjective morality, and so you may have a different moral code than mine, and really all of history could have been subjective morality. Maybe there is no objective morality. But what I mean to say is, to me, a good person is someone who has a clearly defined moral code that's conscious and is willing to sacrifice for that code, specifically. Now for me, that involves, my moral code has specific things in it. Some of them are about honesty. Some of them are about servitude to the world. Me feeling like I am a child of the world or a product of the world of God, and not a child of God, but like a product of the world, and respecting where I came from and trying to give back to it in some good way overall. I have certain morals myself. You may have different ones, but the point is that we sacrifice for them. That's what I think is a good guy. Now, why I bring all of this up is that recently some long-term viewers of my channel have commented that, actually specifically one comment stood out to me, which is a gentleman who said, Leo, I thought you were a nice guy, but it turns out you're not a nice guy, and he said, I like your educational stuff, but I'm not interested in following you any further, or listening to more stuff, you know what I mean? So I wanted to be clear here and very direct. I am actually not a nice guy. I am polite, but I can also be harsh, and I can especially be harsh in certain scenarios. For example, if somebody attacks a family member of mine, or someone I care a lot about, or even just a friend or an associate, if they attack them because of me, I can get very defensive, and I have absolutely no natural thing that prevents me from being confrontational. I have some of the worst oxytocin genes you can come across. So I don't really have any issue calling someone out or being called out or having a confrontation. It doesn't bother me mentally at all. What does bother me, for example, is bullying someone. I would never bully someone, you know what I mean? I would never pick on the weak. I would never do things like that. But for example, why I bring this all up is that recently, in the last 3 weeks of my channel, since Nick Trigili has been having a frequent podcast with me, Nick was picked on first by Caleb von Moger. I saw the screenshot of the messages. I mean, it was very arrogant. He told me to destroy his channel, and I thought that was ridiculous. You know what I mean? We have a voice here, so we should bring this up so Caleb can learn his lesson. Another time was regarding Greg Doucette. People were telling me, when the snitch stuff came out about Greg Doucette, people were saying maybe you're a little bit too harsh on Greg Doucette or something like that. In that case, actually, it's a different moral that made me conflictory with him. Specifically, with Greg Doucette, it's not the fact that he doesn't know much about health and yet claims to be spreading good health and has a cookbook filled with cadmium and iron and processed foods and so on. And I think he does think it's healthy. He's just, not very educated. But That's not why. It's not that, but it's rather the fact that I feel very strongly that Greg Doucette is lying to his audience. And this to me, it goes against my ethical code and really bothers me. Specifically, the way I think of Greg Doucette is as a fake natty, specifically what he calls out people for, natty or nots and so on. The reason why is because I've been around hormones and steroids for 15 years or so, or more than that. I don't know how long, more than that. I've never seen any Caucasian who goes on off steroids, stays on 140 milligrams of testosterone with no AI, with no growth hormone, and keeps that crispy thin skin with very little body fat but a high ratio of muscle mass for over 3 months in a row. And unfortunately, Greg claimed to have done that, and this is where I have developed a personal issue with Greg Doucette. I developed a personal issue. He actually responded to a video of mine in which I was discussing this with Boston Lloyd, and he responded because of Boston Lloyd's name, because Greg only makes videos about people if there's a reason, like a name, almost only. Yeah, there's very little else. So he responded with the Boston Lloyd one, and he lied through his teeth at the camera and saying that he is natural, and then not natural, that he's taking 140 milligrams and zero else. And I know this is not true, and anybody who's ever used steroids for over a year or 2 years know this is not true. So for me, this is an element, another part of my personal morality is I don't like con men. So if I sense someone being a con man, like he's intentionally misleading people in an effort to gain financial outcomes, this really bothers me, and I'll call that person out. Now, sometimes people will spread information that's also incorrect, but I will not attack the person directly, if you've noticed. Like, you can see my review of Greg Doucette's cookbook. It's extremely objective, and this was, I think, before I realized this fake natty, before he made the video at the very least. And you can see other reviews I do, when I mention other people. Sometimes I don't mention them. Sometimes people will come on my podcast and say things that are not correct, and I'll try to guide them in the right direction. But if they stay with their opinion, then I just leave it alone. It's not that I think that I know best all the time, even though I am very rigorous with my research. So I hope you guys understand. My confrontations with people, really, it all boils down to my willingness to confront, and then. Really beyond that, it is something that I grew up with. You see, I grew up in the religion of Islam. And in Islam, we have a principle, which was supposedly a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, which was that and paraphrase, this is not the exact wording, okay? But basically that the best man is one who forbids evil or enjoins good with his hand, meaning coercion. The second best is the one who does it with his tongue. And the third best is the one who does it with his heart or his mind. So for example, if I'm walking down the road and some father is beating his son in the face, I might look at it and hate it and be upset with the father. And that's the lowest level of goodness in Islam. The middle level is to say something to the father. And the third level is to go stop him. Now obviously, you shouldn't coerce people in general, and I don't coerce anyone, and I am particularly not violent. I've given up violence many years ago and forever for the rest of my life. And I really mean this. In fact, maybe I should tell you guys a story about to what degree I mean this. I used to live in downtown LA 2 years ago. And I'd already developed this moral code specifically against violence. And I was walking one day to the barber shop, which was very close to my house, in the morning at 9 a.m. or so. I used to have shorter hair. And this was when I was muscular too, by the way. So I was about 220 pounds, something like that. And I was walking to the barber shop at 9 a.m. But even though I lived in a good building, right next to me there was an area called Skid Row, which is the biggest Skid Row in the US. It's a place where homeless people live, and mostly people addicted to heroin or methamphetamine hang out there. So often you'll see people that are not totally in their right mind. It's less dangerous than it is people not in their right mind. So it's not like Compton or South Central. It's just, homeless people mostly on drugs. So that day I was walking to the barber shop, and as I'm walking, suddenly I get hit in the back of my head. I didn't realize because the punch was really weak. I think the guy may have been on drugs or something like that because the punch was very weak, but he punched me in the back of my head. So I turned around and I found this guy punching me. So I stepped back because I have this code now, I don't want to respond. So I stepped back and I said, please, I don't want any trouble with you, stop punching me. And then he actually turned out to have a friend with him. There was a second guy. I don't know why they were trying to attack me. I don't know if they thought I had money or something. I was wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt, but Anyway, the other guy didn't do anything, but he kept holding like his pants. I thought maybe he had like a knife or something. And then the first guy kept like coming closer to me, trying to punch me more. I think he punched me 2 more times. He punched me maybe 3 times in the beginning before I stepped back and tried to go at a wall and keep repeating, please, you don't want to do this, I don't want to fight with you, and so on. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is I'm willing to get hit and not be violent back. So I have a strong moral code. It's not that I don't, but if I see conmanship, if I see somebody picking on the weak, if I see somebody picking on someone because they're associated with me, and if I see someone picking on someone I consider a friend, I'll usually speak out about it, usually. So that's the way I think, guys. I hope you understand or relate to me. I mean, not all of us are as confrontational naturally, and it's because of our genes also, you know, genetically, as well as the way we grew up. I grew up in a very confrontational childhood, let me put it that way. So I'm okay with confrontation as long as I feel like I'm doing something good. If I feel like I'm not doing something good, if it's selfish, if it's purely selfish, or if I feel like I'm hurting someone that doesn't deserve it or something like that, I immediately stop. I have a very, very strong sense for this, even since childhood. I always, you know, even in childhood, I used to protect the weak in school. I used to fight with the bullies. This is who I was my whole life. I mean, at some points in my life, I got lost from that, but I came back to it, and I have a clearer moral code than I've ever had in my life. So I hope you guys understand and can relate to me, and I'll see you next time.